Good evening, everybody. It is 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm in beautiful Brooklyn, New York, and my name is Max Cohen. I will be one of your hosts for today's episode of the MOCA Live podcast. We have an absolute killer episode for you today with an absolutely killer guest. But first, introducing my co-host, as always, the wonderful, the wild, the wicked founder of the Museum of Crypto Art. Look at that face he makes. Nobody makes faces like him. It's Colborne Bell. Colborne, what's up?
It's been an absolutely wild day, and I am happy for the respite.
Yes, let this place of learning be your respite today. So I was inspired to have today's guest on the other day when I saw his untitled, unless Good Meat counts as a title, parody of Pindar Van Arman's project Reflections, which came out today. But it was Mr. Die with the Most Likes' version that popped up on my Twitter feed. It was ringed with repeating neon green words like meat and was composed otherwise of ground beef and flies. And since then, Die, you've published send-ups in your style of Apple's Vision Pro, Dmitry Cherniak's Ringers, and Xcopy's Algo Bro. And today I wanted to have you on to talk about parody, homage, remixing, the line between them all. So without further ado, welcome to MOCA Live, our guest, Die with the Most Likes. What is up? Welcome to the show.
Oh man, I'm stoked. I'm not a perfect person. Stoked. I'm stoked as fuck to be on, dude. And I was happy you reached out because it's something that I just love and I hold dear to my heart in terms of like embracing humor, absurd madness, and really kind of blurring the lines between between it all. What is ridicule? What is parody? What is appreciation? So it's my favorite fucking thing ever. So I'm stoked to talk about it.
Cool. Well, we're going to spend 45 minutes talking about it. So I hope you are ready for a series of in-depth questions that are going to plumb
Let's do it.
the
Some
very depths
gotcha
of your
journalism,
motivation.
hopefully.
That is exactly what we do on the MOCA Live
This
podcast.
is a hit show, baby.
Right. Just try to get super hot takes. That
You remember that tweet from 10 years ago, Die?
Right.
Die,
We've got it here.
Right.
why do you first question, why do you hate Pindar Van Arman's work so much that you would reduce it to the rubble of a supermarket shelf?
Oh man, it's so funny because like Pindar is not only one of my favorite artists in the space, but just one of my favorite artists in general. I think that he's not only just a genuinely like awesome dude, but his art is so crazy that I think I would have lost my mind doing half the shit he does with those robots. And I'm not suggesting any type of perversion there, but like he the things he does really do skew and again blur the lines of reality itself and what it means to make something and the process of creation. And so, I grabbed one of those reflection pieces today because they're super fucking sick, and I love the collection so much. Like, and it's funny that you say that because like he was so nice when and I look at him as one of the best, an OG AI artist or AI skewing artist out there. So when he had said all that nice stuff when the Beef Broth Ghost came out, I was like, completely blown away by his kindness and sincerity there, because it's like, then you watch him launch something that like completely fucks everyone's world up, like this reflections piece. And, I just felt like I had to pay it homage as a ground beef, sculpture.
Well, so that's a perfect place to kind of jump in, which is like, I mentioned a couple artists before, but like folks like Grant Yun, Mark Rothko, Edward Hopper, like artists throughout history, artists today, like you take all of your own iconography, the beef, the flies, the Pawn Stars, all this like fucked up Americana, and you apply them to the work of these other artists. And like, I know we had mentioned that like, I'd given it a couple categories, right? Homage, remixing, parody, like, how do you consider it, like, and how would you describe like what you're doing here when you like take these works and put them through the meat grinder, no pun intended, of like your sensibility?
It's kind of this desire to be omnipresent and just have just essentially force people to reckon with the concept of the legalization of ground beef and just ground up pulverized animal parts in general. But like really, I think my favorite part of it was the question you even asked, which was like, there's ambiguity in terms of what is homage, what is parody, what, because I also do stupid beef versions of Quantum Cats with like the Lion's Den adult bookstore, or so I think that I really love the fact that there's this kind of obscured perception of what these daily ground meats are. Like, they can range from anything from something that I completely detest to something that I hold very dear. But in the end, I think that the beauty behind everything is that nothing is sacred, and everything is meat in the end, is the way I look at it in some ways.
I mean, even look at like the profile picture behind Colborn's head.
Right.
It's like.
So here's a fun fact, right? Is that a Big Mac, the meat patty in a Big Mac can contain up to 1,000 different animals from 5 different countries.
Holy shit. I did not know that.
And apparently, and nearly half of it, 43% of what is in there is salt.
Wow.
And for only $6.99.
So it's just dyed. It's just more or less dyed salt. Is that how, or the salt is like the adhesive that's holding together all the lips and buttholes of all these animals?
Well, you guys remember, you must have seen the movie like Super Size Me back in the day, where they had like those giant, there were the factories full of like the ammonia ridden like pink waste that they would like form into chicken nuggets.
Yeah. And they claim that that's not the case anymore, but I certainly have my suspicions. But I will say that Grimace birthday shake was like one of the best products I've had over the last year. I don't know if you guys indulged in that.
I didn't indulge, but I'm certainly aware of everything Grimace related.
It was very good. It was solid.
The two bits of iconography most important to me are Grimace and Cookie Puss from Carvel.
Cookie Puss. I don't know if I know Cookie Puss.
That's a good one.
Bro,
no way.
It's amazing. Cookie Puss is a cake like Fudgy the Whale that Carvel makes, except it's like a little face with like these weird little arms. And the backstory is that it's like an ice cream space alien that came down to like save us with flavor. It's amazing.
This guy looks great. I like Domino's Pizza. The Noid really is my go-to guy.
Yeah, the Noid of Domino's Pizza.
Remember that guy? He got
oh my gosh.
People hated the Noid, man. He was very, I mean, he just looks like the most annoying fucking asshole.
Well, wait till you find out that, not to keep bringing up Cookie Puss, but they have a St. Patrick's Day version. I do. But even more than that, I like to say the St. Patrick's Day version, which is Cookie Opus, and everything's green.
We need to make a Bitcoin Ordinals Cookie Puss ASAP. Let's launch that. Let's launch that today.
From your lips to Satoshi's ears.
Yeah, for sure.
But so like this is interesting, right? And this is kind of on topic because it's like all these bits of iconography which are weird and strange and super commercialized, but there's still like a reverence within them. And like even your work, like the going back to this piece behind Colborn, like it's Colborn's face. It's absolutely degraded. It's covered in flies and made of meat. It looks like it's actually melting, but like
reduced in cost. Yep.
But it's reverent, right? And it is like a celebration of our friend Colborn. And
yes,
like that line is so interesting where you're like the iconography that you use takes these things and like reduces them to like Americana rubble, but it is also like celebrating them. And they're like hysterical. Like I guess like where is this place in you, this like desire to mesh this like horrifying bleak imagery with like, I don't know, like you're a super nice dude. Every time I've heard you speak, you're just like a kind, like I could sense the like Midwestern kind sensibility. Like how do you like get these things to meet in this place, which is such like a thin line?
Well, I think, that I would say it's funny. Like I think my obsession with the obsession with ground beef kind of actually started like, I don't know. Did you guys do manwiches when you were little? Like your mom would just buy a huge chub pack and then throw it in that manwich sauce.
Sloppy Joe, yeah.
Sloppy Joe,
the lunch ladies.
Yeah, lunch ladies. But like I think that the meat we had back then was like insane. I would chip a tooth like I legit think it was 60-40 blended meat. So I'm like I'm super obsessed with that because I'm like it's really nostalgic in some ways, that, essentially piling something into a pan and slopping it out for everyone to just eat from a trough, from like the lunch ladies or at home. But I think that the part that I love about kind of threading the bleakness of of the Rust Belt sometimes, or highway culture, loves and Lions Den and like all the fucked up stuff, or fleshlights, and just like the kind of just the kind of descent that we're all experiencing into this like transactional insect state, is that like there is a lot of humor behind it. It's just all really really funny. So I think I think to dwell on the sadness of that, or the bleakness of those things specifically, and not to have your own take or remix them in a comical way, it almost just becomes too unbearable to endure in many ways. So you might as well just lean into it and exaggerate it, and fuck it out, and have it be this kind of high octane gas station sex bill, for lack of a better thing, where people can like just laugh at the absurdity and the things that we embrace and indulge in on a regular basis.
What kinds of
If
like
I
reactions?
can,
Yeah, please.
if I can jump in here, and without revealing too much about our friends here, and share maybe that all of this comes from reality, right? The reality that we're coping with, of just perhaps like drowning in spam and inauthenticity, and also at some point probably in our lives being facilitators of this system. Like my first job right out of school was like quote unquote investment banking, but it was the 2000 Vin Diesel Ben Affleck movie Boiler Room,
Oh man.
in which we were just like churning and burning, like I
Yeah.
was calling every single secretary for every single doctor, lawyer, trying to get them on the phone, and then passing it to the managing director, who would just pitch them something absurd. And the sad fact of the matter is that it works. So like the more kind of shit you just throw out there, this is what we're kind of reduced to, is just kind of churn and burn digital mass marketing. And it's really like deleterious to the human situation. It's really easy in all of this exposure to get depressed on how we're moving out of community into digital spaces, not knowing anymore if people are human or real or AI or what is generated this thing. And I think at the end of the day, yeah, like all you can do is laugh, and we kind of have to push through this exponential shit pile that we're casting.
And oddly enough, it's an interesting point, because we're purveyors of that exact shit too. I mean, like we're doing it, like we're creating content for people to consume, as it were, and it's just so funny. I mean, I'd like to think that this is somewhat, I don't know, elevated or something, but at the end of the day, it's just so funny to imagine that we're there with our shovels, creating an indiscernible pollution pile that's just like impregnating the clouds that kind of hang over all of us. There's nothing wrong with it, but like that's just kind of the reality we live in, like you said, Goldborn.
That reminds me of like a lot of your stuff reminds me of George Carlin, in the sense that like George Carlin was amazing at like staring into the void and like finding something funny about it. I was just talking with a friend about this bit that George Carlin did, the comedian. For those of you who aren't aware of him, you should definitely check out George Carlin, because he was like the GOAT.
He
had this bit about
he's a little comedian. He's kind of like Dane Cook, for those of you who don't know.
He's basically Dane Cook.
Right.
But he had this bit about stuff, and he's like, we spend our lives and we get all this stuff, and we really like the stuff that we have. We have these like big boxes with apartments and houses so we can hold our stuff. And sometimes we go over to other people's houses and like they have nice stuff, but we don't like it as much as we like our stuff. But sometimes you need a vacation from your stuff, so you go to a hotel room where they have like stuff that like you wouldn't buy. It's not your stuff, but you kind of like spending time with someone else's stuff for a little bit. But then after too long, you start to miss your stuff, so you have to go back home to be around all your stuff again before you get sick of it. And it's like, obviously, comment on consumerism, but it's also like, I don't know, misery loves company, right? And we're all in this fucking meat pile together. But I also think that it's like not easy to necessarily see that, especially if it's like, I don't know, we have a seriousness problem in crypto art, which I want to talk about later at length, but like people take their work and their art very, very seriously. Totally fine, and totally their right to do so. But then you take it and you like, again, put it through this meat grinder that you make, where it becomes like churned out and messed up and sometimes frankly like revolting. Like did you, when you first started doing this, like your earliest like parodies of these works, like were people pissed, like, or was it always like, I don't know, gratitude that you were like sending up their work in this way?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I don't even remember, to be honest. I think the first one that I did that got any sort of notoriety was the nipple ringer, and Dimitri was so kind. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, it's a ringer, but it's as though it's nipples instead of rings, and then or instead of pegs, and then the description is that they were like hastily pierced at a Claire's like minting shop in Shipshewana, Indiana. So like that was on Hick and Nuke when I minted that thing, and it was really funny because he reached out and was like, "Dude, that is a rad piece." And that was the first time that anyone I think has ever said anything when I did that. So him and I have become friends. Like I was very yeah, I was really honored that he would say that about something that was a nipple version of his work. So it was super cool. But for the most part, everybody is really cool, and I think that maybe it does fall into the category where there is uncertainty whether it is homage or not. But for the most part, man, like I really dig a lot of the artists around here, and so there I think that the parody skews more into the the PFP shit or the like whatever Ty Lopez like experience or like the Doodles Pfizer the Doodles times Pfizer collab where they're like giving out vaccines at Shoe Carnival or whatever. So those are the ones that I just love kind of skewering a little bit more. But even then, it really all is in good fun. It's never really done, I don't think, in a hurtful way. I hope. But yeah, so mainly people have been pretty chill with it, and I think that ultimately there's an element there where I think the thing is just it might be too absurd to even have any type of reaction to, where it's like, well, what do I make of this? Here's my piece with like people did like a meat piece the other day, and then I did like a dick piece to combat it, and I had like a Brazzers logo on it and stuff, and it's like, what do you even do with it? So maybe that's kind of where people skew onto how they're looking at it too.
Have you ever like pissed someone off with them? Like, has anyone ever come at you with like real negativity because you like sent up their work in a way they didn't necessarily appreciate?
No one has. It's strange, man. Like I think, yeah. Hopefully that never happens, but no one has quite yet. Yeah, I actually would have anticipated somebody doing that, but it's been pretty chill. I'm trying to
So,
think. There's been people who have gotten pissed at like some copy pasta that I've done, but no one that I really care about.
so what makes something
What
like,
do you care about?
Yeah, I guess nothing. I don't really. I guess there's not a lot, but yeah, it's pretty fun.
how do you decide like what you're going to send up or what you're going to remix? Like what hits you and why does it hit you in that way?
I think that if I get a small laugh to myself about reimagining it is meat, that's like the number one thing. So if I'm going through my timeline and I'll be thinking like tomorrow's one is actually Ray, who's an awesome artist. Ray, what's his last name? He's super dope. You guys know he's got like he's got like an ether sign for something. Ray Larsden. Well, he did this dope, crypto art NFT class of 2023, and that's the one tomorrow because I just saw it and I'm just like, well, this would be hilarious if the crypto art class of 2023 was just a pile of rotting meat and that's it, and that's the depiction of it. And so that's gonna be it tomorrow, so everyone can like look forward to that. But I try to just like again kind of just make myself like laugh in some ways and just say like what would be like a comical depiction of this, and then that's kind of how I decide really. And sometimes it's just stuff that I've been like super stoned on the couch watching daytime television and thinking like, oh man, like Judge Judy won and turn her into Judge Dredd, or there's just weird stuff that I'll just think about kind of on a daily basis. And it's funny you ask that because lately, I don't know, I'd love to ask you guys about this, man. Lately I've just been like, I felt like my Twitter addiction was getting insane for a while. And
Mm.
over the past like week and a half or so, I've been trying to be less on there. And I think that my creativity is absolutely skyrocketed since not just being glued onto that godforsaken app. I don't know. Have you guys found that too, that you're just, dying on there lately, or, have,
Colburn, what do you think?
I'm spending less time. We just had this conversation yesterday, right? About social media, Max? I
I
don't
feel
know,
like we're
man. It's
constantly
everything
talking
is
about
a
it.
steaming again, it goes back to the fact that like what are we doing?
Yeah,
What are we
what is
doing?
it? That,
I mean,
what are
like
we?
I'm just I'm playing this crypto the game. There's like 140 people left out of 500. And I don't really want to make it about this, but it's just like all day politicking, nobody building. And that's what I felt for the past 3 years, kind of in the NFT space after the market was taking off. It's just like politicking for bags and nobody actually building. And it's kind of to the point of absurdity where if we don't actually get people into the space, invested, involved, or make it easier, people give a shit, well, then it all goes to zero. So what are you really politicking over? It's just
Right.
way easier to like run your mouth online and say either something trolling, nobody knows if it's real or authentic. A lot of these people in my mind sound like completely off their rocker. So like go back into the laboratory and build something or create something. And if you don't do that, then I don't know.
Yeah.
I spend more time on Twitter than literally ever. It's just a constant upward trend. And I hate it, but I also, there's like, I might be totally misreading this, but like, there's also an element of like, I am present in my Twitter usage to an extent. Like I'm not deep in my head in a sense that like, I feel that that's really when I start to get, I don't know, not negativistic, but just like away from the reality that I'm experiencing. And even though it's theoretically like a distraction to be on Twitter and such, like, I don't know. I guess I was just about to try and make like a Buddhist defense of social media usage. And even as I was saying it, that didn't really, I don't want to go any further with that. So no, it's a dead cancer and I hate it. And now everyone's moving to like Warpcast. So am I, but it's
Dude,
like
I was
just
so.
another.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because I kind of know where you're going with it because on one hand, it's a detestable, like skin tag on our fucking asses, but then on the other hand, it's like there's something that is reflective of like what we're all going through right now in terms of like our fast casual existence is humans and it's easy and it's like popcorn and you just sit there and consume all day and it in some ways it's super rad because like for as much as it sucks like I wouldn't have been able to have like whatever any I wouldn't have seen the success that I've had as like an artist. Like the most I ever sold a painting for before like digital art, before like, Twitter kind of got big and stuff was I think I sold one for $70 one time. And it was like a painting that I'd spent like, 100 hours on or something. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
this is sick, dude. Like I was super pumped. Not that that's not a good amount of money, but like it's just weird to think that that social media is kind of again the adhesive that pulls us all together and like we wouldn't be doing this pod and I wouldn't have met a lot of really solid people but at the same time it does just feel like a toothbrush shank that's just bleeding you out on a daily basis so it's a weird
Yeah,
balance.
but I guess like the point is that, and like I feel like this plays in a lot of your work too. Like social media is the void. It is literally like the
It is.
crumbling,
Yeah.
ultra loud void, which is there, right? And I think that on some level there is some use in staring into it with
Yeah.
relative frequency. Maybe not staring into it always, but like you can't ignore that this like tank I just came back from vacation recently and one of the places that we went to was this like seal reserve where all these seals come to mate, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's like 200,000 seals in the seashore and they are just like crawling all over each other. They smell absolutely terrible, but it's just like rats, right? Like rats or ants. And there is, as horrible as it is to say, like there is a truth in the fact that like to be alive is to like be a crawling insectoid worm, like,
Yeah.
like lusting after consumerism and lusting after
Uh-huh.
like food and sex and purchasing and like status and all this stuff that like your work forces you to look at by like literally melting and being beef. Like again, the thing behind Colborn's head is a perfect example. Like there is use in like existing in this space and seeing the like tangled mass of humanity that it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's deeply depressing if it's not like balanced out with something else, but it's not a completely like there is something that is, even in its terror and its like baseness, like beautiful about it. It's like a carnal, gross, crawling beauty.
Agreed. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, like it really is kind of like a shared, like I've talked about this, it's kind of like a shared glory hole, like everybody's just sitting there waiting for an unreciprocated orgasm, and that's just kind of what it is. But at least you feel something for a moment, right? I guess.
That's okay though. It's okay.
Right, right, right.
Masturbation is good.
Yeah,
You're
there
not
you
growing
go.
hair on
Yeah,
your palms. This isn't the
yeah,
Catholic Church of the
yeah.
1500s. You are not going to
I
explode
know.
in fire.
Yeah, I was raised Irish Catholic, and it is the amount of regret and remorse you feel in everything you do is nuts, dude. I don't know if you guys were too, but it is not a fun place to be.
Oh, I'm Jewish as Jewish can be, and that means Jewish
Mm,
guilt. It means the like the
so
legacy
similar.
of a. I mean, there's definitely some crossovers.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
guess there's a similar commitment to like birthing as much as humanly possible.
Right, for sure.
Uh, when you look at like when you make your own work and it's like staring into the void versus when you're like remixing somebody else's work and it's staring into the void, like is there like a similar approach there, or is there like a difference in how you like approach the void when you're like being careful with like I don't know trying to honor somebody else's work as opposed to degrading it?
Yeah, there definitely is. Well, for a lot of my pieces specifically, I think there's just a lot more like thought. Like you said, it's carefulness and thought and consideration. Like they're really, for as much as they kind of hit you in the face when you pull back and read the prose that I write and stuff, I really try to be as considerate as I possibly can in reflecting on the memories that I've had and the emotions that I've gone through, and like really trying to adequately express those things. And like it's something that I take super. So like on one hand, I think there's like a ton of comedy in that, and then on the other hand, where like you were saying earlier, like I do take it really seriously, those pieces, and especially like when people collect them, like I want them to or experience them just by looking at them on Twitter. Like I want those people to feel something and like really be brought into that specific memory or emotion. And so like yeah, that's my number one goal. So like I think that there's a tendency for those to be a little bit more hopefully consuming and a little bit more suffocating in some ways.
Fair.
Yeah.
I wanted to. I want to make sure we get like ample time to talk about this because I think it's like the subtext to a lot of your work and a lot of the reason why people really identify with what you create, which is like I mentioned it before, like crypto art has a self seriousness problem, and maybe like all art movements have a self seriousness problem, but like I don't know, crypto art between its like the hopelessness of an extended bear market and like this attempt by artists to like reach some kind of sublime and feel that they are like capable of actually doing so, like it can be pretty abyssal, if that makes
Yes.
any sense, and like bleak and argumentative and like oftentimes kind of cruel, and like there's all this drama and sometimes you'll like insert yourself into that drama, like when Jerry Saltz was beefing with Rafik Anadol and you like noted that Jerry Saltz liked your Edward Hopper send up of
Yeah.
Nighthawks.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
you have this ability to both like be involved in like this drama and this like kind of hatefulness and this like void, but like also float above it, like you're an emissary of it and not being consumed by it, which is really interesting. You invoked Beeple before, and I think that like there's a really interesting parallel there because Beeple does that as well, obviously coming from like different sides of the thing, but Beeple's like doesn't matter how much shit he gets, he's like remains completely untouched by it. He keeps doing what he's doing,
Hmm.
keeps like creating and sending up and like paying homage. But like this comedic kind of overtone that you put into all of your work, like, is that a safety mechanism for you to survive in a place as like bleak as crypto art? And like, has it helped you to survive in a place that again can be pretty like void forward?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate, I think, because it does really help, right? When people can't tell what's serious, what's not, or like just creating this kind of onslaught of absurdity, and it makes it easy to comment on stuff and like just do whatever because it really is kind of a lawless and like I use the word onslaught because I do think that there's a like to my work and like what I do out there in my commentary, there's like a relentlessness to my hunger to document like the shit that's
Mhm.
going on and have and kind of almost just be you know, omnipresent with everything. Like I've said that like my number one goal is to be just fucking everywhere. Like I don't care. I want to be like we talked before the thing started. I want to be on a pair of, you know, crotchless khakis at Kohl's, or, you know, like I want my art to be literally everywhere, and I want my takes to be everywhere. So it's it makes it easy, and it's just funny. Like I almost look at it like it's a kind of almost like a stand up or something, like this perpetual stand
Mm.
up bit that I'm doing where I can comment on stuff, I think that there's part of it again that none of it really comes from a place of you know, hatred or otherwise. It's always just a place of trying to extract what's going on, and then like just exaggerating the shit out of the absurdity of whatever that drama is, whatever that take is, and and then I think people find that the hilarity in it, because even those involved in it can take a step back and say like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what is this? Like Colborne said earlier, what are we doing here? And that's always the question I want people to kind of ask themselves.
Colburn, have you seen like crypto art get more self-serious over time since like the beginning? It seems like
That's a
from the
great
stories
question.
I've
Yeah.
heard, it's like it started out a lot more like playful, and like again, we've talked about this with like collaborations. How there used to be so many more collaborations in crypto art. Now, people for the in a lot of senses, it's like a lot of like every man for himself.
I mean, man, that's a really difficult question to answer. You
I
know,
only
it's
throw
hard to
hardballs at you.
call, yeah, it's hard to call anybody's art in the beginning not self-serious, right? But you had voices like A Lot of Money, who, and probably Mohara, who we spoke to earlier, who were laying the groundwork and template for something that was more you know, something that a tradition that Die with the Most Likes has carried, right? It was really, it was examining a pretty horrid thing through a lens of humor and parody. And for me, you know, that is always the most effective way to get the point across.
Mm.
So uh, it it's been there, you know. I think Robness was very good at being like point on cultural, very sharp with what was happening, what this would lead to. The art was also educating the audience around what we were concerned about, the ideology, and maybe because the audience is educated now, it's defaulting to perhaps storytelling around collections and bodies of work instead of something that might uh, reach out further to other people, if that makes sense.
Well, like I think you hit on something important, which is like basically the way Gen Z treats humor en masse. Like so much of TikTok, so much of just like meme culture is parodying horrible stuff. And like we do that like automatically, I think, in crypto art to an extent too. Like when you were speaking, and I kept thinking of Kevin, the Pixelmon thing, right? Like that's a horrid story, right? If you look at the truth of the matter of this company basically like sapping $70 million in mint funds from the community
I think it
and then
was
basically
more.
absconding
Yeah,
with it. It might have been, yeah, even more than that, whatever,
It
however
was a
many
lot.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars. Like
98,
it's
whatever.
it's terrible. How many people like were screwed over in that? How many people like put their like very good-hearted belief in like this project only to have it like squandered? But then out of it comes this like this character, this meme, this like Frankenstein-esque monster of Kevin that like the community incorporates into itself as a symbol, because otherwise it's again, it's like it's either you are consumed by the void or you like, you know, laugh into it, right?
I think that's right. And I think that it's weird. I wonder if well, I've talked about this with like Summer Wagner, who's you guys know her. She's just an
Mhm.
ungodly photographer, but she her and I talked about this. I think that she takes a little bit of a different approach where her tweets are so earnest and just like beautifully crafted and stuff. But I think that both of us yeah, we have a strange approach to things, and because I like we were both doing those like, you know, she was doing like $40 like huge portrait shoots for people, and so I think that I look at the space, and I try not to take myself too seriously, because like there were so many years where like anything that I made was just completely disregarded or not even like looked at, let alone bought. So I just look at it and I think that I try to find ways to keep things hilarious and insane because it it is insane that we're all here right now doing this shit, like it is
Mhm.
crazy. So I don't know. I think that maybe that has something to do with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, especially, I've been incredibly, this is the first time, crypto art is the only time that anybody's ever given a shit about the stuff I've written. Like, I've spoken at
Right.
length about, like, I wrote a novel and nobody could have cared less naturally.
No.
I've written a million short stories and submitted them to a million literary magazines, and like it goes nowhere. And then I come into crypto art and I
Yeah.
start writing these like little bits of like art criticism, these essays, and people are they have kind words for me. And it was like the first time in my life I had actual like there was any kind of expressed admiration for the work that I was doing. And there is, even in like that little moment, I've heard Sarah Zucker talk to me at length about like the importance of just like psychological support, even if you can't give like financial support to
For
these
sure.
artists. Just like there is something, everything is contradicts itself and everything is like too large. There's like a beautiful and a horrifying in every single thing, even like, the beef broth goes of yours, like they are, if you take away like the context of like what you're doing and you just look at like the straight colors of them, like they're these beautiful color studies. And if like, you don't read the artist description, that's like, you know,
Yeah,
about
yeah,
meat and consumerism, like
yeah,
without the
for
context,
sure.
it is beautiful. And it's like,
Yeah,
however deep you get into this thing, there are like new facets of like how gorgeous it can be and how rewarding it can be. And also how deeply deleterious it can be to your health.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you are not wrong there. And it's same like I wrote I had written this book that I'd spent so much time on and like nobody I think my dad was the only person to read it, which like I wrote it for him more or less. It's like a yeah, it was a parody book, but now that like yes, that now that people are like kind of fucking with my art and stuff, like people have gone back and read that book and like that's almost more special to me than anything else because it took
Mm,
so long and I just assumed that no one was ever going to read it. So it's been pretty insane.
sure. Something I'm curious about with you is, you did a piece for us for the Mocha Room Bitters Club called Chumzuki, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
like Chum Lee from Pawn Stars with a bong, but he's like styled after
Yeah.
like, the
Yeah.
Azuki product. And
Yeah.
like, you minted that, right? And Beef Broth goes, you minted. But a lot of these pieces that you like just throw into the ether, as far as I know, are unminted. They're just kind of like there to be seen. And we spoke with Mahara a couple weeks ago, and he does something similar, right? Only some of the pieces get minted. A lot of them are just kind of to be seen and then like thrown back into like the churning river that is like Twitter. Like, how do
Mhm.
you decide which of these pieces are like worthy of being minted and like having that like kind of a more eternal life, and which are just kind of for like viewing pleasure and consumption and then to move on from? Is that like a conscious choice?
It definitely is. Yeah, like if they exist at like a large enough scale where I feel like it propels my overall like narrative of what I want to tell while I'm here and while I'm making art, then then those usually qualify. Like that, someone would look back and say like, oh, this is a cohesive, narrative, even if it's insane at points and like it may not make sense, at face. I think looking at it and saying like, oh, this is like part of like the absurdist documentary that was kind of being crafted at the time. And
Mm,
otherwise, I mean, they have to definitely be they have to be something that I'm just really proud of too, and whether that is there are memes like I definitely launched some with that nifty chub pack where there was like a bunch of just yeah there was a bunch of just
Mhm.
crazy ass memes and stuff in there, but they were definitely something that I was really proud of because like those things can take a lot of time to think about too, like they may not be, and that's like you talk about like the seriousness of the space. I think there's sometimes this I don't know what the word is, like, expectation that, like, the good pieces just take, like, 5 billion hours or something, but they just really don't have to. There's, like, beauty in sketches, there's beauty in memes, there's kind of beauty in all of that shit, so, I don't know, that's the way I feel. I don't know about you guys, but I just think it's, like, rad to have kind of a combination of both. Like, a piece can take a super long time, but also it may take, 20 minutes, but there's a kind of big story around it, or like the thought process behind it or like what it was kind of conveying was a lot more complicated than the 20 minutes it took.
yeah. I mean, I think that this is like again the self-seriousness problem. Like it starts out with like somebody's attitude towards their own work, but then it manifests in all of these like expectations that like we are then subconsciously pulled to put on to like all work. It should all take this long. It should all be like incredibly thoughtful and like use every resource at one's disposal. And it almost it becomes like exclusionary at a point because like the more serious you are about this art, then the more closed off you'll be to like other versions of how like artistry manifests. You'll like lose yourself to the momentary and the reactive and the like the quick and dirty, which again, beauty and all of those things. And I think that like we can just see it in how like the messaging on crypto art has like evolved, and there is so like little celebration of things that aren't like these grandiose. I mean, I do it too. I love these like grandiose performances and these things like the Pindar reflections that we were talking about today, which took obviously so much time, and it's so thoughtful, and like we have this incredible breakdown that like he and Sovereign have given us of like how this came to be, and all the different technologies working in concert. But like it's just not applicable for most people, nor should it be. Everyone should be able to put things out like, it's like, I wonder if we took that same attitude and we applied it to like modernist poetry, like would we have E. Cummings and Ezra Pound, which are so like ridiculous and there's obviously craft and artistry in them, but like they're so silly and short and like honestly can be stupid at times. Like, would we miss out on all of these things? Would Warhol be able to exist in this space because like he's just sending shit up and doesn't seem like it's taking very long at all. The Marilyn Monroe pop arts, right? Like, would that be able to exist here, or would we like delete it because it doesn't show some like, I don't know, grandiose reflection of like a craft or technology?
It's a good question. Yeah, Colborne, what do you think? I mean, I feel.
Well, look, I made a whole thing so people would just share and mint more things.
Yeah, right.
I need all of this content, like authenticated provenance, digital identity. I want artists having, millions and millions of authentic pieces out there, because I really think that where the internet is headed, where the future of content is headed, is there are going to be people outside of yourself, forces much larger than you, that have every single data point about you. They know what you like, and they're going to be like auto-tailoring AI content to you on demand. So the likelihood that you exist in 5-10 years with any human thing online is so low.
Oh,
right?
God. Dude, so you think that like more or less everything. Yeah.
I also just think at the same time, there's going to be AIs that are collecting, and like the second any human drops something, well, like if we have a bot problem now, then like a pack of AIs are going to be on any single thing that you mint. So the fact is that we don't even remotely have a scarcity problem, because there will be there will be so much, I think, demand for anything that is like, I don't know, real and authentic.
Actual, yeah. And then that becomes harder and harder to tell, I guess, too, on what is, because I know I sometimes can't tell what's AI or not, or whatever. And the other strange part, man, now that you say that, I mean, first of all, what a great problem to have. I mean, can you imagine just a bunch of nebulous bots swarming around your work, just buying it all up? You don't know where it's going or anything, but it just sells out immediately. I mean, sign me up, dude. But
I mean, I think the way I see this is that the market for culture gets as liquid as the market for crypto tokens. Right. And if you are not like out there with 21 million pieces plus, then you're just like not competing on the same scale. I think everything is going like hyper liquid, hyper financialized, and then everybody will hate everything and will like have to decide to turn the switch off. And like start over.
Yeah.
I think like I'm thinking now about SoundCloud, and how throughout like the 2000s and the 2010s, like what SoundCloud represented was an ability for musicians to not focus so much on like to put out more, right? To put out behind the scenes, to put out like clips, to put out like unfinished things. And you had like so much more of a glut of music. And, I'm just thinking about like pretty much every kind of artistry, whether it's writing or music or theater or dance or, like cooking, right? Anything that we turn into an art form, like we reward abundance, right?
Mhm.
More poems, more books, more films, right? Like no one would denigrate Martin Scorsese if he came out with 2 good movies in a year. But there's this expectation with visual art that it's going to all be, that there's going to be like sequestered all of these ideas and all of this technique in like a piece, and it's going to get to stand for quite a while. And I'm wondering, like, Colborne, why do you think that that has evolved with just visual art? Or like, and is this the moment when like visual art is
I
trying to
mean,
have its like
visual
abundance
art is
renaissance?
it's the last thing that hasn't been touched by distribution and abundance.
Mhm.
Right? It's just inevitable. This is where we are going. And I don't know, I really don't know how, but the fact of the matter is people will shift, and it'll happen exponentially away from like mindless scrolling, probably into mindless ownership. And
Yeah.
and that transition feels inevitable.
We can even see it with like the warp casts and like the frames, which I don't really understand very well, but you're like able to mint things directly in the app. And it's like, at what point are you just like forgetting? And whether that's good or bad, I mean, 0-1 is along those lines too. Like you're collecting so much that it's almost like the goal seems to be that you're like almost forgetting all the things you're minting. They're just becoming part of this like tableau of your like tastes.
Yeah, I mean ownership will be tied closer to your identity set than say like a like or a retweet or a comment, right?
Mhm.
And we're building all of these data profiles around ourselves. And in the past, we did it around engagement. In the future, we will want to do it around ownership, because then we can at least own it, sell it, move it, whatever. But to think that we are not constantly on the internet, like tastemaking and curating and driving some sort of algorithmic process that defines the whole thing, right? It's all very much interconnected.
But I would even argue that it needs to be ownership, because like I have this experience on Facebook where it's gone way too far with tastemaking. Like I love anime and I've been really into Jujutsu Kaisen lately and I love the anime, but now Facebook, which knows that I'll sometimes like stop and look at a graphic of some anime character or something or other, it's feeding me way too much of this content. And now like I'm being spoiled by like manga that's ahead of me in the anime, and I like have to mute words because like it's taste making based on things I'm not consciously choosing. At least with ownership, I can at least like move the needle of whatever the algorithm is showing me to something that like is more in line with my taste than like these knee-jerk reactions I have to like seeing a post that I'm lingering on for 2 seconds. The algorithm says, oh, he must be interested in this content, let's show him as much of it as possible, and then like I'm caught in this feedback loop that I don't want to be in.
But think about that when it's real time generated in those like 0.2 seconds, right? What if it knows like tonight you spent like 10% less time looking at that, and then it shifts to a different, and then it's just like real time generating content for you. It's going to be wild, man.
I don't even know what to think about it. Yeah,
Di,
I mean, like,
do you use AI in any of your work, or have you?
only the Brothko series actually, and like it was interesting because like I was actually pretty resilient to the prospect of it because I don't like giving up control of my vision. Like I generally like have a pretty specific thing that I want to create, and that's just it. But it did become a useful tool because like I painted like 30 of those things, and we trained the model around those 30, so it was kind of definitely a collaborative effort, like not just raw output or anything like that. I definitely appreciated that part of it. But for the most part, man, I think that there's really something, you probably get this with your writing too. I think that there's a sniff test, especially with writing, that I can pretty much always tell when it's AI. And it's funny, like I've been asked if the stuff that I write is AI, and it just definitely none of it is. Like I love writing so much, and it's like a really special thing to me. So I find the prospect of like a machine taking that over to be like really, really fucking sad, to be honest. Like I find it unbearably sad because like
Yeah.
I already hate because I hate my job, and so you can do that. You can have at my job, but like don't take away the thing that I actually like to do.
Yeah. I mean, I used, when I was, spending years applying to writing jobs with no experience, like it was only like these things that like Game Rant and Screen Rant, whatever. And it was just like taking away, it was just these like listicles and just the like purposefully the most soulless, like formulaic kinds of writing. And I never understood it. Like, we're here at this point when like we are all seeking work that is inimitable, even via AI. Like, even like the beef brothcos are clearly you, even if it uses AI. Like, we want this relationship with creators, and like it's like the sniff test is becoming more and more complex by the day, because we're like we're aware of what smells bad. I'm getting more and more aware of what smells bad, and there's fewer and fewer things that actually smell pleasant.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
So to speak. Anyways, Di, we've taken up too much of your time to begin with. Let's no, you got more?
No, I was just gonna say, this has been an awesome conversation. So I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been super. Yeah, it's always fun to talk about the shit that that we're all thinking about, and hopefully people get like a new perspective on like whatever this shit is, and maybe we can all wade through this shit stream together.
Well, it's like your work, man. You got to like you got to pull the shit out of the void and like actually take a look at it for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to take a moment and, talk to the audience, say what you got going on, anything like that? You have anything you want to mention to the world?
Thank you. I mean, I hate plugging stuff, but there is, dude, like we were talking before the show, myself, and then the incredibly, just incredibly talented Xerox and Luis Ponce, who like we became friends through the Hick et Nunc era of like this madness. So, it's like, it's gone back a ways. We did a collaboration together. It's just like, I'm just so proud of it and so happy with the way it came out, and we're gonna release that on Foundation on the 15th. So just like super stoked about it. And it's a really brutal piece, and I think that like the really important part of it is just that it embodies all of our styles without anyone feeling overpowering or something. So it was just really cool to collaborate with two other artists who I just adore and respect the shit out of. I'm just giddy about the piece, honestly. Like, I laughed when I saw the final thing. I was like laughing because it took like a year to finally manifest, and like for all the kind of stars to align. And I was just, it's just funny, dude. Like, yeah, I think you'll really dig it. So people can be on the lookout for that. It's going to be wild.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Colborn, any last words for the world before we get out of here?
No.
All right. I will leave you only with this, which is, if you listen to our conversation today with Die with the most likes, please follow us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, or leave us a rating. I don't think a single person has left us a rating. I don't even know how you do that, but if you can figure it out, we will appreciate it. I'm not really sure even I just hear every podcast host ask for like likes and ratings. I'm not actually sure what it does, but I can't imagine that like the audience for this podcast is too big outside of those who are listening anyway. But if you want to see equally thoughtful content in writing form, please follow our Substack at museumofcrypto.substack.com. Die with the most likes you can find on Twitter at Toad Swyback, if you don't already follow him. Colborn is Colborn with a 1. I'm Cohen the writer. You should check out what we got going on. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been awesome. Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, everybody. And
peace.
We will be back real soon.